Okay, everyone, welcome to Here for Healing. I'm here with my friend Jeanne, who's also a local mom in the area and an amazing resource when it comes to prenatal nutrition, postpartum nutrition, hormones, fertility. So I'm super excited that we're going to get to have this conversation today. Her official bio is that Jeanne Reilly is a registered dietitian and mother of two with over a decade of training and experience in prenatal and postnatal nutrition, research, practice, and application. She's also the co-founder of I Am Nurtured, which is a holistic prenatal and postnatal supplement company. And so really what we're going to get to talk about today is how that company is different from everything else out there, from the conventional kind of over-the-counter prenatal vitamins that people are given, but also the ways that we can support our bodies heading into pregnancy, after pregnancy, what to do when women are getting off of the birth control and getting ready to conceive. I also put a question prompt on my Instagram, so I have some good questions from there. So welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I know, like I said just a moment ago, that you're a registered dietitian, but tell me a little bit, kind of briefly, why you even cared about going into that field of work. And the reason that I ask is I've found for myself and so many people on this podcast who are in the healing fields of some sorts, like we have a personal reason that we're doing that work. So I'd love to just hear a little bit more of your backstory that got you to do this work today.
Yeah, there's definitely a story there. Personally, I had so much confusion around nutrition when I was growing up, right? So I came from a family that kind of like my grandparents were very unhealthy. My parents took it to the opposite end of the spectrum and were like overly healthy. Okay. And I always felt like, there's probably, an aspect of this that like became part of my identity that like I had to be healthy or else, right? Mm-hmm. Or else I would get sick, or else I wouldn't look the way I'm supposed to look, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's a big part of me that wanted to find the truth and say like, okay, outside of what I was taught, which was low fat, sugar's okay because it's low fat,
right?
And, doing all of these like Weight Watchers and cabbage soup diets and like doing the really restrictive calorie counting stuff, which I was also taught in school. Mm-hmm. What is health and what is nutrition, and how do we integrate that into our lives in a very natural way? And it's very hard today because most of the food and nutrition and health out there, health companies, right, they're marketing slogans, and they're highly processed foods, and they're convenient and quick foods. It's not the slow, whole foods that are actually best for our bodies. So in, going into this field, I actually learned to strip a lot away of what I was taught growing up, and taking away all of these marketing slogans and all of the recommendations from all of these bodies that are, like American Heart Association, and I have to say I'm sort of an unconventional RD, because
I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah,
actually,
because what I learned in school is not what I practice. Mm-hmm. And I had to do a lot of re-education after I got out of school and realized what was missing from this, big old credential I spent 3 years getting. And, a year-long internship, in the hospital and in school food settings. And I was like, this is not health. You go in a hospital and people are not fed healthy food. There are soda dispensers. There's, highly processed food and candy machines. And the food is not what you want to be feeding people who need healing, right? Mm-hmm, it's really highly processed. Same with school meals. I remember one of my school projects being, here's your budget. Here's what you have available to you in terms of food. Make it fit, right? Mm-hmm. And it was really sad. That's why, tomato sauce on pizza is considered a vegetable in the school food realm. So I kind of went into this thinking like, okay, this is what we're teaching, but this is not necessarily correct in my mind. Mm-hmm. There is a lot more natural healing that can happen when you're not counting calories and trying to fit processed foods into, nutrient counts for children or people that are sick. Mm-hmm. I knew that I never wanted to practice in a hospital or like a really confined setting. So I actually started out, my first job out of school was this digital health startup, and it was really like concierge medicine. We had a team of nurse practitioners, exercise physiologists, and dietitians that would see each client that came through our office and get this whole picture on their health, internal, external, and we would really follow them very closely to help them get to their goals. That's actually where I met my co-founder. We were both dietitians working there, and eventually even that was a little too constraining. There was a lot of calorie counting, and that's not to say that like calorie counting and macro counting can't get you to your goals. I think it's a tool that is very effective, but it's not the way that most people want to live the rest of their lives, right? Like we don't want to think about everything we put in our mouth as a number. It's a way to reach our goals. And I probably, temporarily, unless you like people who practice it long term, it kind of just becomes second nature. But a lot of my focus was teaching people how to eat intuitively, paying attention to body cues. What does it feel like when you're just satisfied versus overly full? And how does that play out to your body composition? I ended up leaving that digital health startup and going into private practice, where I was just kind of coaching mostly women, a lot of around body composition goals. And then I became a mother, and that changes everything. So my co-founder and I got pregnant around the same time, and he and his wife had their own journey with fertility, and I was just pretty gobsmacked by postpartum my first time. And we met at a playground date with our kiddos when they were almost a year old, and we were just kind of talking about what we could do to share the information that we learned going through this, like with the background of being a registered dietitian and knowing how to approach the research and seeing the discrepancies between what the research shows that we actually need to support healthy fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum recovery, and what mothers are actually being told to supplement with, what they're being told to eat, how they're being told to support their bodies by, OBGYNs or whoever they have on their birth team. So, and there was a big discrepancy. So we kind of just set our intentions on filling this gap and creating something that we feel would be a really good baseline support in addition to food first. We really believe in food as medicine. So we look at supplements as an insurance policy to a really balanced diet. And as much as we can, right? We have all had pregnancy food aversions and morning sickness. And, sometimes it's hard, especially if you have other kids you're taking care of. Like getting 3 balanced meals and snacks a day is not attainable for everyone. It takes a lot of intention and planning. And, sometimes it tends to be that thing that falls through the cracks. So we just wanted to make sure that, especially in this time of life when mothers need to be feeling their best to be able to show up as their best for their family, their jobs, whatever it is, nutrition makes a huge difference there.
I love it. And I'm curious about some of the discrepancies between what you feel like women are being told and what we actually need. But even before that, you said something earlier when you were talking about like low fat and cabbage soup diet and all of these things, like intense calorie restriction. And you were like, I was looking for the truth around nutrition. My question is, did you find the truth around nutrition? And do you think there is a truth around nutrition?
I think everyone has their individual truth, right? I think the one truth that I have found is that whole foods are always the best, right? Whole nutrient dense foods are the best. And obviously, like if you can go down the road of like organic, pasture raised, getting them locally, eating seasonally, all of that. Or you can just say, for people on a budget, like I'm just going to do my best and like shop the perimeter of the grocery store and not get the highly processed foods. So I think, when you get down into the nitty gritty of like what diet works best for everybody, I do think there's so much bio-individuality there. Some people tolerate and need much higher carbohydrates in their diet. Other people like feel really wonderful on carnivore, and their blood work supports that that's great for them. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's a knowing your body. So if anything, like the truth is, it takes a time investment and really awareness and attention to how food makes you feel, and, experimentation. It's figuring it out, and it can take time. And I always suggest that people get support from a health practitioner or looking at their labs and trying things out. If you do one thing and you're not getting the goals you want, or you're not feeling great, time to switch it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm a testament to that in my own life for sure, because I've been interested in how nutrition supports our overall well-being for well over a decade. And in the height of my cancer healing journey, I was doing raw vegan, and I was doing these big raw salads with lots of superfoods and nuts and seeds and 64 ounces of raw organic cold pressed juice, which is where our company Alchemy Juice came from. And I was thriving. I felt so good. I didn't even know that I could experience life feeling like this. And I was also really thin, not too thin, not sickly thin, but I was like thin for my constitution. And then once I got pregnant, I started adding some animal protein back in. And then in postpartum, I was feeling so good doing a lot of animal protein. So like 150 to 200 grams of protein a day. And that was what started supporting me then. And I started going to CrossFit and building muscle. And I was just observing without labeling, shaming, judgment, anything, just kind of how my nutrition has shifted throughout the different seasons of my life. And it's why I asked that question, because I love what you said, is that there's truth for each person, and I think there's also truth around where you are, what your needs are. Do you have a newborn baby? Do you have teenagers? Where do you live in the world? So there's like this crossover of like intuitive eating mixed with, what the body really needs. And nutrition is just such a fascinating topic.
It is ever changing. Like, you are always, if you're not learning, you're falling behind.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about some of the things that I grew up with in the 90s, like Snackwell cookies. I don't know, that low fat Snackwell cookies. You're like, yep, that's good. It's no fat. And I'm like, I wouldn't touch those with a 10-foot pole.
Never. And I had so much criticism for my mom going into nutrition, like my school program, like, how could you feed us all this stuff? And I look at the information she had available to her then, and that's what everyone was saying is so good for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so these discrepancies. So obviously we know there's kind of like this generic information for pregnant women in regards to nutrition, supplementation. What do you feel women are being told when it comes to pregnancy that's actually not supportive? And what would you recommend instead?
This was actually one of the triggers for me, like in making sure that I went and did something about this, right? Because when I was pregnant with my first, I went to my OBGYN and asked her for her best recommendation for a prenatal. And she said, anything on the shelves at Target or CVS is fine. And I was like, I don't know everything about this, but I know that's not right. Supplements are an unregulated industry, and they are so many cheap ingredients, so many bad formulations out there. And I did know about like the discrepancy between folic acid and folate. And I know that most prenatals out there still include folic acid. So I knew at that point that the vast majority of women still see OBGYNs, right? And they're getting their advice from them. OBGYNs, they have their place and their purpose, and they do a lot of good in the world. They do not have a lot of nutrition training. And as is the case for most medical doctors, right? So I think, some of the biggest discrepancies are that women are getting their nutrition advice from people who don't specialize in it. And that the popular recommendations are not actually fitting their needs. So up to 60% of women have this MTHFR variation where they cannot process folic acid. If they're taking a prenatal vitamin with folic acid, it's not turning into folate. It's not converting into folate in their body. So they could have a folate deficiency, and which we know leads to potentially neural tube defects, deficiencies for mom. the other part of that is that folic acid can build up in the body and create other issues. So that discrepancy alone was like, this is the one nutrient that we're all drilled into, how we have drilled into our heads that get folic acid. You don't want neural tube defects in your baby, but it's not ideal advice. So it was really important for us to get that information out. I will also say, going back to my training as a dietitian, we did not touch on this research for pregnancy, postpartum fertility. This was a whole new education that I had to enter into when I entered this phase. In fact, it's why my co-founder and I, when we went through this process, we were saying, like, if we don't know this information as nutrition experts, what is the average person going around there believing? Where are they getting their information and what's reliable? So we really had to dive into the research and see, like, the stuff in our textbooks is 20 years old. The new research, there's not a ton of research on pregnant women because a lot of people don't want to study pregnant women. It's a risky area. You don't want to, offer a nutrient to someone and not another person and have poor outcomes, right? But there is a lot of new encouraging research on specific nutrients like choline. Choline's another one that is not in most prenatals or is present in very small amounts. And it is just as important, if not more so, than folate. So it plays such a huge role in babies' neurodevelopment, the nervous system, the brain, and it's huge. It's also a big bulky nutrient. So it's present in such low amounts in most prenatals because it takes up so much space. So like those one-a-days or the gummies, like, you'd be surprised. Look at the nutrient facts. There's probably very little to no choline in there. Yeah.
So you and your co-founder are at the playground, and you're just like, we're not taking care of women in the best way.
Yeah.
You go about to create a supplement which has, I'm hearing folate over folic acid. It has choline in it. What are some of the other things that you're mindful of to support women in that stage of life, nutrient wise?
Yeah. Methylated B vitamins are very important.
Okay.
There are, with all of these vitamins, there are very cheap forms. You want methylated forms. That's the active form that's ready to use by your body. It doesn't have to go through any conversion steps. So you're not losing any of the intake that you're getting from your prenatals. Iodine and selenium are extremely important for thyroid health. Thyroid disorders are very common in pregnancy and especially postpartum. Postpartum thyroiditis, it's a very common symptom. A lot of moms see that, you may not have had thyroid issues before pregnancy, and in such a sensitive time when hormones are kind of going through this roller coaster, it's very important to be supportive. Yeah, iron is another one that is a hot topic right now. Your blood volume increases by 50% when you're pregnant. And so we need supportive iron doses. Not every woman needs supplemental iron or in high doses. However, iron deficiency anemia is extremely common.
Yeah, I did. I had to take a blood builder.
Yes. Yeah. So, these are like magnesium is another one that's so supportive for sleep, for muscular health. And it's one of those, another bulky nutrient that is not present in most prenatals. DHA and EPA are extremely important. We don't include them in our prenatal because they should not be combined. It's an oil and it can go rancid. It should be taken separately. So if you have a prenatal that is, an all-in-one capsule, just be mindful. You can usually smell when oil has gone rancid. So use a sniff test or just find a prenatal that doesn't combine. They should be taken separately.
I'm thinking now, like, as I hear about this and like how, if you just go to CVS and Target and you just grab anything off the shelf, like how much disservice you're doing to yourself. Like, let's assume baby's okay, right? Baby's able to source what he or she needs to grow and to be born healthy. But for the mother, as we go into this time of postpartum, I imagine, it's already hard with sleep deprivation. And then there's things like postpartum depression and anxiety and fatigue and hair loss. There's already all of these things. But how how else can a woman be affected by not having the proper nutrients in her body at such a vulnerable time in life?
Yeah. This is I think like what we are combating is a depletion, right?
Yeah.
And take pregnancy out of the equation, take fertility out of the equation. Women are walking around depleted, men too. You know, our food is not what it used to be. The nutrients in an apple today are not what they were 40 years ago. Our soil is depleted from the way that we farm. So we are not getting the nutrients that we need from the food that we can consume. You know, best case scenario, you're getting it from a regenerative farmer in your neighborhood. But when you go and buy food at the grocery store that came from Mexico and was picked 3 months ago, you know, it's just not what our bodies were able to benefit from 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we are walking around depleted, and there's plenty of research to show that. So there are side effects for that when we don't have enough of these or when our nutrient stores are not full when we're entering into fertility. That impacts how these follicles develop into eggs, and that impacts how the egg develops in your body. It impacts implantation. Mm-hmm. It impacts sperm fragmentation, DNA formation, methylation. It impacts if you're able to carry your pregnancy to term. It impacts blood pressure issues in mom. You know, I'm forgetting the term. Preeclampsia.
Yes.
It impacts your delivery and your postpartum recovery. I mean, I've talked to doulas who can see a difference in the tissues, the placenta and the tissues of the mothers who are really focused on their nutrients and intake during pregnancy versus like vegans. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that vegans aren't able to have healthy pregnancies. It means that vegans especially and vegetarians need to be very mindful of making sure that they are supplementing appropriately, especially for B12 and other, like lots of minerals that are typically found in animal foods. Mm-hmm. So you know, if we're talking about depletion and postpartum, as you mentioned, hair loss, skin, cognitive issues, brain fog, muscle tension, like Charlie horses, and especially, you know, the mental health. Mm-hmm. Things like vitamin D and omega-3s play such a huge role in mental health. Vitamin D is one of those ones that is so, like, most people are walking around deficient. And it can be very simple. You know, you can supplement, you can go sit out in the sun, vitamin D is one of the ones that's a little bit tougher to get from food. Most people could benefit from a supplement or sitting out in the sun. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the depletion plays a big role in how we feel. And this is something that I think it's hard to tie, like say like, oh, I took my vitamins and now I feel great. Yes, you may feel that if you're really depleted and all of a sudden you're getting all these methylated B vitamins and you have energy again, mm-hmm. right? But it's more of, that's why we encourage testing to see where you are. Mm-hmm. And it's not just like your standard blood panel you get from your doctor. Like, look at the nutrient levels, look at your vitamins and mineral levels and see where you are before you're even considering trying to conceive, if ideal. Mm-hmm. Because if you can look at that and say like, wow, I have some work to do here and take a few months to get those levels back up to baseline, your outcomes will be so different than if you enter into pregnancy depleted, which depletes your body more. And postpartum takes even more, especially if you're breastfeeding. It's more nutrient demanding even than pregnancy. You're healing this dinner plate sized wound inside your body, which I don't think most people give attention to. We don't see it. And so you're healing, your body's producing milk, so much of your nutrients transfer through your breast milk. You're still nourishing this baby. You're not getting enough sleep. You know, there's such a high demand. So if we can avoid these depletions and at least keep nutrient stores at a baseline, the outcomes are completely different.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean, I'm in the throes of all of this. I'm 4 months postpartum, breastfeeding my baby. Before we started, I was like, it was either do the podcast in my gym clothes, unshowered, or cancel. And I really wanted to have this conversation with you. So I'm in the throes of it. And I can say for sure, without a shadow of a doubt how much better I feel in my third postpartum compared to my first two, just because I'm more educated on this stuff. And what I'm thinking about too is you're sharing is like, listen, there's a lot going on when we're pregnant. There's so much going on when we're postpartum, and the value of thinking about some of these things before like the season of conception even begins. Like if it's like, oh, I find out I'm pregnant, and then it's like, okay, what am I taking? And let me go get my blood test. Now, granted, that can happen, but like, what if we were to start thinking about it a year, 2, 3 before you're even gonna start to get into the period of conception? And so I did actually put a question box on my Instagram to see what people were curious about, and 2 themes came up. One was the first one is like, what can I do in my 20s, just to support overall healthy hormones before this season? And then the second one, which I'll ask you after, is just, okay, now that I just got off birth control, now what do I do to support my hormones as I, move into conception season? So I'd love to hear both of those.
So 20s, oh my gosh, what a great time.
Yeah.
We feel so resilient, right?
Yeah,
like our bodies just feel like they can handle anything. And a lot of times they do, they bounce back really quickly. However, there are things you can be doing especially to support hormone health and, make sure your body is ready for conception whenever you arrive there. Keeping inflammation low is a big part of it, because like that's like kind of this silent thing that happens in the background. And it could be from the water that you're drinking. It could be from the food that you're eating. It could be from the air that you're breathing, the plastics in your environment, the pans that you're cooking on. Like a lot of these, estrogen mimics from things in our environment can really disrupt your hormone balance in your system. So doing what you can in your 20s to like really keep your environment clean internally inside your body and externally in your home as much as you can. Look at what cleaning products you're using, get rid of those fragrances, try to avoid plastics. Look at the water you're drinking, get a filter, and, air filters in your home. Like it all makes a difference. And I also recognize that this sounds like it's more complicated than it needs to be. And it is more complicated than it used to be. Our air quality is different. Our water quality is different. The plastics and toxins in our environment are different. So yes, it takes a little bit more intention than it used to. Another thing in your 20s is just eating like a good balanced diet. I think it's very easy to, eat out a lot and not really give a lot of intention or awareness to what you're putting in your body. Making sure you're getting like good quality protein, healthy fats, paying attention to how your cycle is acting. Like, do you have a regular cycle? Are you dealing with any hormonal issues like PCOS or anything like that? And not putting birth control on top of that as a Band-Aid to regulate your cycle. So, if your cycle if you are on birth control and you're not aware of what your cycle is doing, I would say, I know a lot of women they like the convenience of a birth control that removes their cycle completely. But what that's doing is it's blinding you to what's actually going on with your body. So, if you do want to be on birth control, I would like a level up from one that prevents your period would be one that does not prevent your period. So you can see like, am I regular? How do I feel during my cycle? Am I getting really bad PMS? Because that's another symptom that, your hormones maybe could use some support. So yeah, we talked about inflammation, just a really good, solid, healthy, balanced diet, and paying attention to your blood sugar balance. So blood sugar plays like the downstream effects of glucose control and insulin control are so vast. They play into inflammation, they play into hormone balance, they play into fertility. It really does have a large impact on your life and your health. So, a lot of people are wearing little glucose monitors every now and then. If you want to try that out every 6 months, once a year, just to see how your body's doing. And ask your doctor to include your fasting insulin on your lab work. So you can see there are also other measures like HOMA IR, things that are going to really show you how your body is reacting to how your insulin resistance or non-resistance is, how your insulin is reacting well to the food that you're eating. So just starting to pay attention to things. Like I would just say like keeping a watchful eye, right? Your body really is resilient at this age. And there are a lot of things you can do to ensure that it stays that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love it because I hear suggestions like that and I feel like it's not radical. You know, those aren't radical things. It's just a slight shifting of your perspective. Like, okay, yeah, let me be mindful. What cleaning products am I bringing into my house? Can I switch to glass over plastic Tupperwares? Let me be mindful of my cycle. You know, I remember for years not thinking anything about my cycle. It was just like, yep, got my period. I don't know when, how. Don't get pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, and then as I got older, I realized the importance and how much wisdom there is in understanding our cycle. And I'm going to share it here because I've wanted to share this for so long and I didn't know where to, but this is like a PSA. Okay. Just on hormonal birth control. I don't do hormonal birth control for a variety of reasons, but recently she's in her early 20s, my sister-in-law was telling me that you can use the Oura Ring to sync with the Natural Cycles app for the temperature method. So I always knew that you could either to call in pregnancy, you know, to see when you're fertile, or to prevent pregnancy. I know that you could take your temperature every single morning. And I tried doing it for a little while, but like you can't move and you have to take the temperature and then like manually write it down and just like human error, right? And so I wasn't really down with the Oura Ring because I don't really like to wear wearables. Like I have this step counter, but it's not connected to Wi-Fi at all. So I was never really down with the Oura Ring. And she was like, no, you can turn it on airplane mode. So essentially what I did, and maybe I've been living under a rock, but just if anybody else has been living under a rock, this is for you because this blew my mind. I got the Oura Ring. I only put it on at night and I put it in airplane mode. And so I wear it at night. And then in the morning, I put it on the charger and it naturally takes my temperature the moment that I wake up. And then it syncs with the Natural Cycles app. So then I open my Natural Cycles app and it's like, you know, perfect data points to know when I'm ovulating, you know, things like that. So does everyone know this?
Yes. I will say like, I do think like some more of like the natural cycles method and temperature and avoiding birth control, it's gaining popularity. I think there's a segment of the population that likes the convenience of just taking a pill or getting it's like an IUD or something. But like we're on the same page. Okay. I will avoid hormones and putting exogenous things in my body at all costs. And it is extremely reliable when you can use your body's signals to tell you what's happening. You will know when you're ovulating if you have that data. And you will know when or when not to have intercourse and all of that. So that's the data that you need. And it's providing this clean slate for your body where you don't have to deal with all of these other downstream effects of hormones or, the potential impacts of having an IUD complication, so it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Whether you want to wear a wearable or try temperature or ovulation pee sticks, whatever it is, there are ways to prevent or allow for pregnancy when you're just paying attention to your body and your cycles.
Yeah. I was like, this is genius. I need to tell people. So I'm glad I haven't done it yet. So I'm glad it came up on this podcast. Okay. So how about for the people who have been on hormonal birth control? Now they stopped taking it. Would it be the same things you said to the women in their 20s, or is there anything different that they could look to do? Yeah.
Okay. So what I would say is, if you're someone who went on birth control when you were 15 for acne or because you had painful periods and you've been on it, now you're 30 and it's 15 years later and you've been on birth control for 15 years, there are going to be nutrient depletions. It does leach nutrients from your body, specific ones. So that I think it's even more important, especially if you have been on birth control for years and you are coming off with the interest of getting pregnant, there's repletion that needs to happen. So get your levels checked, get on a really high, very high quality comprehensive prenatal and potentially others if you have specific nutrient depletions that need to be taken care of. it's just one of the things that, we need to pay attention to, because there are very clear effects of what the hormones do with our nutrient stores.
So I Am Nurtured has a prenatal, but do you have other products in your line?
We have a postnatal also, which is meant to be a booster.
Did you bring me that?
I did.
Yeah, okay, great.
It's meant to be a booster on top of the prenatal. Okay. And it's an add-on with additional nutrients and botanicals because, like, as I said, we need more postpartum. So what we would encourage anyone is begin your prenatal 3 to 6 months before conception if you're trying to conceive. And honestly, like, I'm 5 years, almost 6 years postpartum, I still take it. Wow. Because it's an amazing comprehensive multivitamin, and it covers all my bases. And that's the goal. There are nutrient levels in there that are specified for supporting pregnancy. Like, as I mentioned, the choline, magnesium, we have a low dose, supportive dose of iron in like a very absorbable form. But it's a great baseline, and you don't want that to go away when you're postpartum. You want to add to it. So the postnatal has additional vitamin A, additional choline, and additional vitamin D. With our prenatal and postnatal combined, there's enough vitamin D that mom's getting that it's adequate to pass to baby through breast milk, and you don't have to do the vitamin D drops for baby. So when you're getting enough vitamin D, it's adequate for baby. And for some of these other nutrients, just like when you're building a baby in your body and baby will take what it needs and you're left with the leftovers, that's the same case with breast milk, right? Baby will get what they need. So it is important to, we suggest adding that postnatal support on through your breastfeeding journey. Yeah. And even if you are not breastfeeding for whatever reason, at least 6 months postpartum, because your body, as we mentioned, is doing all of that healing. There's so much recovery. There's like all of your tissues are coming back into, there's so much additional support that is needed for the wound healing, the hormone balance, the energy repletion, all of it. So it's a really important time to support yourself.
And so how are you working with women one-on-one now?
I do also, yes.
Yeah. What is like the most common reason that women are coming to you?
Most of it is just, they're not feeling great, right? And they want to feel well as they progress through pregnancy and postpartum. Postpartum depletion is another big one. Like, how do I get back on track of like feeling like myself postpartum? So I don't tend to work specifically in if there are fertility issues, but I will help in preparing women and in making sure that they are replete for pregnancy and able, they have their nutrition bases covered. But when it comes to like fertility struggles, like that's not my wheelhouse. That's more of a fertility doctor. But yeah, a lot of it is, moms that are also struggling with morning sickness or can't seem to get specific foods down, like finding ways, helping them to get the nutrients in. But postpartum is a big one. Postpartum is where all these sort of effects of either depletion or just these new demands are coming out.
Okay, so following the trajectory of what we've covered so far, we're talking about women in their 20s who are looking at making switches to, more non-toxic products, to being mindful of eating more real foods and moving away from processed foods, to maybe understanding a little bit more about their cycle, what the intelligence and the wisdom of what our cycle's telling us, and even doing some testing to see where we're depleted so that we can start filling those reserves. So we're heading into pregnancy. We can start taking your prenatal, getting ourselves, filling up any of depletion, repletion, you said. And then we have our beautiful baby. We're postpartum. We're taking our postpartum one for 6 months or to 5 years like you, which is amazing. And I'm so glad you brought me that because I'm going to start taking it. Someone had actually gifted me your supplement when I was pregnant, but I didn't have context to you and your story and what it was about. And now I actually didn't take one prenatal. I kind of mixed them all
Yeah.
together. But I definitely would have taken it now, knowing you and your perspective and the heart behind why you put it together. Okay, but now it's 6 months postpartum and it's baby's time to start eating. Why are the conventional foods that most people are giving their children, like rice, cereal, and banana, potentially not the best first foods to give our kids?
Yeah, I think a lot of standard advice out there from whether it be pediatricians or old advice from fear of allergies or poor reactions is it's outdated, right? So rice cereal is convenient. It's highly processed. You add water or milk or whatever it is, and there you go, right? It's not nutrient dense. It's basically just a filler. Same with bananas. Like there's not a whole lot of nutrient density there. They're very bland foods. If you think about like when you have a stomach ache, what do you eat? Bananas, rice, very bland foods. So there's a lot of like, if you think about, when you and I were probably growing up, did you know anybody in your class that had food allergies?
Yeah, no.
There was like these peanut-free rooms and like all these crazy allergies that are out there now. They didn't exist when we were kids. Somewhere in the 90s, the advice changed to avoiding allergens like peanuts as long as possible to prevent allergies, right? To give your immune system time, the baby's immune system time to develop. But what ended up happening is with that limited exposure, when the baby or the child was eventually exposed to peanuts or whatever allergen, wheat, there was a stronger reaction. Their immune systems were not introduced to it, so there was an allergy. We've since gone back to recommending that you expose babies early and often to any potential allergens. So dairy, wheat, peanuts, any of those. And I think like my philosophy is exposing them early and often to flavors as well, to different textures. You're developing your baby's palate as well as their immune system. So, there is the advice of introducing one type of food at a time is solid. Like you want to see like if your baby really does react poorly to dairy and he's getting like gassy and uncomfortable, that's important to know. Especially as you're just starting to introduce foods. But also like avocado, give them some, like I told you this, I was mixing liver into the ground beef I was giving my baby. And now there are really convenient mixes that already exist out there. Like Force of Nature has these ancestral blends where you can just cook up some meat that already has organ meats in it. But babies actually need that additional vitamin A and the iron from organ meats. It's recommended. But, they're not getting that from something like rice cereals are fortified with usually cheap forms of these nutrients that the babies need that are not digested and absorbed well. So it is sort of like, I think a lot of pediatricians will look at it as this insurance policy of like, oh, they're getting iron in the form of rice cereal, or they're getting a little extra vitamin A or folic acid in the form of rice cereal. But it's so much more bioavailable if you're getting it from a whole food that has all these other cofactors involved that helps with the uptake and the absorption. And like liver, for example, like it has so many other nutrients in it besides just iron. It has vitamin A, it has the B12, it has choline, it has so many of the nutrients the baby needs, not in isolation, and with so much other nutrition that's coming with it. So my philosophy is whole foods always, even for baby. And like, you do have to be careful with what they're eating and choking and all of that. And, I'm a big proponent of baby-led weaning. Just teaching them how to eat and what to eat and exposing their palate to all these different textures and flavors. And I've seen it. I have a really dear friend who's a chef here in Dripping, and he feeds his little 2-year-old, eats more foods than I do. Wow. He makes them like these like liver and onions or like these amazing foods that are so nutritious. And that's all he knows. He's not craving sugar because that's not something that he's exposed to. He doesn't get like these processed foods.
That's amazing.
So it really is like you're educating your child's palate and their immune system. So expose them.
Yeah. So do you have a list of like 3 to 5 of your suggested first foods for a baby?
Oh yeah, we did. So you, again, like you want to, like, I'll just say in baby-led weaning, they tell you to give the baby pieces that are like kind of like the size and shape of a finger that they can grab onto. So avocado slices were a huge one for us. Sweet potatoes, and like these aren't finger-sized foods, but it's what we did. Like we just kind of let him go to town with either his hands or like a little baby spoon. Greek yogurt is amazing, like whole fat Greek yogurt. Yeah. They're just like, and then
the liver and ground beef?
The liver and ground beef, super nutrient dense. We also would mix a lot of things into Greek yogurt, like peanut butter. You know, if I was trying to get him exposed to something, I would mix it into the Greek yogurt. We also did like lots of food, lots of fruits. Just getting it, you know, fruits are like a little more acceptable. You can do like a soft melon cut into sticks. Just nutrient dense, colorful. He's getting all the fiber and all those like delicious cofactors that you get from real food.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love it. I'm excited. I'm a couple months away from Kai getting his first food.
It's such a fun, messy time.
So messy. I remember with Cruz, I was doing the egg yolks, like running egg yolks with liver, and you know, I was like, this is different. And I followed a lot of the Weston A. Price teachings when it came to foods for baby.
Solid. Yes, solid advice.
So is there anything that we didn't note on today that is just on your heart, on your mind, something that I didn't ask about that would add value to this conversation?
I think, yes, we're in this world where there's an overabundance of information, right? And everyone has an opinion, and it's really hard. As I had a friend who's just had her first baby and called me because she said, I don't know what to do. Like, what's right? My doctor said this. What do you think? There are so many prenatals out there. I don't know what to choose. Like, I'm so overwhelmed going to look into this stuff. And what I would say is try to distill it down to making things as simple as possible. Like, have a few trusted resources. Find a friend that you really trust or who has, you know, health practices that you admire, and ask them for some recommendations. Because moms, I mean, honestly, like, I go to moms first.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? What did you use? I had a friend that gave me her whole, like, this is all the gear, baby gear you need. I didn't even look at anything else. I was just like, that's what I need, right? So find a trusted mom friend. Find a practitioner that you really trust, like whether it's a midwife or a doula or someone that you aligns with your beliefs and your practices in terms of health, and ask them for recommendations. And, you know, I will also say on here, one of my favorite nutrition researchers in this field of pregnancy, postpartum, fertility is Lily Nichols. And she's got some incredible books that are like hundreds and hundreds of research papers that support this information. She has Real Food for Fertility, Real Food for Pregnancy, which also includes postpartum. And she's also got another book called Real Food for Gestational Diabetes. And I also just want to say, like, gestational diabetes can happen to the healthiest of us. And there are ways that you can address it naturally with food. I just had this conversation with a friend of mine this week here, and has the healthiest practices and wore a continuous glucose monitor instead of doing like the Glucoa drink to see what her glucose levels were doing. And, you know, they were a little high. So she was able to take that information and make adjustments in her food and her carbohydrate intake, you know, not making sure she doesn't eat naked carbs, you know, always combining them with protein and healthy fat and fiber. So, you know, there's so much information out there. Find those trusted resources and lean on them. And don't be afraid to get a second opinion if, you know, things aren't feeling like they're going the way that you want.
It's such good advice. I mean, mothers, we do the research.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, most of us probably have more nutrition training than most medical doctors when it comes to what we're feeding our children, you know? Right. So I love that advice. And I have Lily Nichols' book. It was actually one of the first ones that I read. It's so good. Really, really good. So I will put links to everything, you know, your contact, the links to the supplements and kind of everything that we talked about today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I love having these conversations.
I appreciate you. This is is going to help a lot of people.
Yes, that's the goal.
Thank you.